Sarah Miller and her boyfriend, Jason Carter, appeared to be just another struggling young couple in Ohio, raising their baby in a modest home. But when Sarah's frantic 911 call reported that their infant had been mauled by the family's Pitbull, the tragedy seemed horrifying yet simple. Neighbors mourned, headlines screamed about another violent dog attack, and the Pitbull was quickly blamed. Yet behind the walls of that house, investigators began to notice cracks in the story. What started as a case of a dangerous pet would unravel into one of the most chilling betrayals imaginable, with a shocking twist no one in the community could have seen coming. The story began on what seemed like a normal evening in a quiet Ohio neighborhood, where families usually felt safe leaving their doors unlocked and children played freely outside. But that peace was shattered when a desperate 911 call came from a young mother who cried out that her baby had been attacked by the family's Pitbull. Within minutes, emergency services rushed to the home, finding the mother in tears and the baby gravely injured. Paramedics worked quickly, racing the infant to the hospital, but despite their efforts, the child was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Shock rippled through the community, and whispers spread about yet another Pitbull tragedy, adding fuel to ongoing debates about the breed's danger. News crews arrived outside the home, capturing footage of the dog being taken away by animal control. To many, the case seemed tragically straightforward, but for detectives assigned to investigate, something about the scene felt unsettled. When officers entered the home, they noticed details that did not line up with a typical dog mauling. There was less blood in certain areas than expected, and the location of the injuries seemed unusual. While the Pitbull appeared agitated, there was no sign of a prolonged struggle in the room where the mother claimed the attack had taken place. Some neighbors described the dog as friendly and protective, while others insisted they had always been uneasy around it. These conflicting opinions only made the case murkier. Still, the official narrative pointed to a dangerous pet suddenly turning on its most vulnerable family member. It was a heartbreaking story, one that fit a pattern too often repeated in headlines across the country. Yet in the back of their minds, investigators wondered if this explanation was too neat, too easy. As they began gathering evidence, they photographed the baby's wounds carefully, planning to compare them later against known bite patterns. They interviewed the distraught mother, who stuck to her account that she had stepped out briefly, only to return and find her child bleeding on the floor with the Pitbull standing nearby. But her story carried subtle inconsistencies, tiny gaps that made officers question whether she was telling everything. Though no one voiced it openly at first, suspicion slowly began to creep in. Was this truly the result of a violent animal attack, or was the truth hidden behind a carefully crafted story? The first chapter of the investigation was only beginning, but already the case was setting itself apart from what anyone expected. The coroner's report arrived within days, and it cast the first serious shadow of doubt over the story everyone had accepted. While the infant's injuries were undeniably severe, several of them did not align with the shape or spacing of a dog's teeth. A few cuts were long and thin, more like slices than punctures. The chief medical examiner noted that although pit bulls could cause devastating damage, the angles of certain wounds suggested something far sharper had been involved. Detectives felt the ground shift beneath their feet. If the pit bull had not caused the fatal injuries, then who or what had? The revelation pushed investigators to take a deeper look at the family's life. On the surface, the mother was a young woman raising her child while working part-time. But beneath that facade, she was drowning in unpaid bills and strained relationships. Records showed she had missed multiple rent payments, and neighbors quietly mentioned loud arguments with her boyfriend that often spilled into the street. It painted a picture of a household under stress, where tempers could flare easily. Still, suspicion without evidence meant little, and police needed something concrete to push the case forward. That breakthrough came from a surprising place. While searching the home again, detectives uncovered a bloody kitchen knife hidden beneath a pile of clothes in the laundry room. The discovery immediately shifted the tone of the investigation. Testing confirmed the blood on the blade matched the infant's and the knife's edges were consistent with the sharp cuts noted in the autopsy. Suddenly, the story of a pit bull attack seemed far less certain. Questions poured in faster than answers. Why was the knife hidden? Who had used it? And why would anyone try to cover up the evidence instead of telling the truth? Detectives returned to the mother, pressing her with careful questions, and though she maintained her account, her nervous demeanor betrayed cracks in her confidence. At the same time, the boyfriend's name began surfacing more frequently. His alibi seemed fragile, and his relationship with the mother was anything but stable. What once looked like a simple animal attack was beginning to unravel into a much darker mystery. The knife had changed everything. What had seemed like the tragic end of a baby's life at the jaws of a pit bull was transforming into something far more sinister, and the search for the truth was only intensifying. Investigators turned their attention to the mother's story, dissecting every detail she had shared. She had claimed that she was in the kitchen when the attack occurred and returned to find her baby on the floor, bleeding, with the pit bull standing nearby. But each time she repeated the account, small differences appeared. In one version, she said she heard a loud crash. In another, she insisted the house was silent until she discovered the injuries. Detectives noted how often she avoided eye contact and how her voice cracked when pressed about the timeline. Her inconsistencies raised suspicion, but it was the boyfriend's role in the tragedy that soon became the investigators' focus. He initially claimed he was at work during the attack, a statement that might have cleared him if it weren't for glaring holes in his alibi. His timecard revealed a suspicious gap, showing he had left early and failed to log his return. Investigators began pulling surveillance footage from businesses near the home, hoping to verify his movements. The search paid off when a gas station camera recorded him only minutes before the 911 call, placing him close to the house at the exact time the baby was fatally injured. The discovery added an entirely new layer of suspicion. If he had been nearby, why lie about it? Meanwhile, forensic specialists continued their examination of the wounds, comparing them to both canine bites and sharp objects. The strange combination of injuries supported the theory that the baby had been stabbed before the pit bull ever entered the scene. This revelation changed how detectives looked at the case. The dog may not have been the aggressor at all, but rather a confused pet reacting to chaos already unfolding inside the home. As evidence grew, the couple's behavior came under heavier scrutiny. Friends and neighbors recalled shouting matches, sudden disappearances, and an atmosphere of constant tension in the household. The image of a grieving mother and her supportive partner began to crumble under the weight of testimony and physical proof. Detectives grew convinced that the dog attack narrative had been staged to conceal a crime. The critical question now loomed larger than ever: who had wielded the knife, and why had they chosen to let the pit bull take the blame? The answers, investigators realized, would likely expose a chilling betrayal within the walls of that Ohio home. Forensic experts became the turning point in the investigation. They carefully reconstructed the baby's wounds, running controlled experiments with both canine jaws and kitchen knives of different sizes. Each test revealed that while some marks matched the shape of a pit bull's bite, the most devastating injury, a deep puncture to the chest, was entirely inconsistent with any animal attack. Instead, it lined up with the blade of the bloody knife found hidden in the laundry. The revelation stunned the investigative team. It meant that the pit bull, once condemned as the culprit, might only have acted after the fatal injury was already inflicted. The narrative of a savage dog suddenly seemed like a carefully planted story meant to divert suspicion. Detectives began to piece together the puzzle with this new understanding. They revisited the couple's phone records and computer searches, hoping to uncover what had been going on in the days leading up to the tragedy. What they found chilled them. The mother's search history included phrases like dog attack injuries and pit bull mauling statistics, suggesting she had researched ways to make an animal appear responsible. These searches had been conducted just days before the baby's death, painting a disturbing picture of premeditation rather than an accident. The boyfriend's actions also raised red flags. Financial records revealed he had recently withdrawn a significant sum of cash, and police later learned he was planning to leave the state. Surveillance footage placed him near a bus terminal shortly after the baby's funeral, reinforcing suspicions that he had intended to disappear. His sudden urgency to escape cast doubt on his innocence and made him the prime suspect in the eyes of law enforcement. With mounting evidence, detectives confronted both the mother and the boyfriend separately. The mother continued to insist the dog had acted alone, but her tone grew increasingly defensive. The boyfriend, however, could not explain the gaps in his story or why his fingerprints might be tied to the knife. The investigation had shifted dramatically. No longer was it about whether the pit bull was guilty, but about which of the two adults had staged the elaborate cover-up. The discovery of digital breadcrumbs, financial moves, and forensic truth had dismantled the original narrative. The tragedy was no longer a story of an unpredictable pet. It was now an unraveling human deception where every new detail pushed investigators closer to exposing the truth. The case reached its breaking point when forensic analysis of the knife revealed clear fingerprints belonging to the boyfriend. This was the evidence investigators had been waiting for. The discovery tied him directly to the fatal wound and shattered the last fragments of his alibi. Detectives brought him in for questioning once again, this time armed with undeniable proof. Faced with the weight of the evidence, his composure cracked. What began as quiet denial turned into trembling silence, and eventually, he confessed. He admitted that the baby's cries had pushed him into a violent outburst. In a moment of rage, he grabbed the kitchen knife and struck, leaving wounds that would later confuse investigators. The Pitbull, distressed by the chaos, had bitten afterward, unintentionally creating the illusion of a full-blown animal attack. The boyfriend also revealed the disturbing pact he had made with the mother. Terrified of losing everything and fearing prison, the two decided to blame the dog. The mother, desperate to protect him and unwilling to face the shame of the truth, had agreed to hide the knife and maintain the story. Together, they staged the scene, hoping investigators would accept it as another Pitbull tragedy. They underestimated the persistence of detectives and the precision of forensic science, which ultimately unraveled their plan. The revelation shocked the community. For weeks, the neighborhood had mourned the child's death as a case of a dangerous pet turning violent, but the truth exposed a far darker betrayal. The Pitbull, once vilified and condemned, was cleared of the charges that nearly ended its life. It became a symbol of misplaced blame, while the real horror came from within the home itself. The mother was charged as an accomplice for her role in covering up the crime, while the boyfriend faced the full weight of murder charges. The tragedy was a devastating reminder that appearances can be deceiving. What seemed at first like a straightforward case of an aggressive dog revealed itself to be a carefully crafted lie. The big twist of the investigation was that the true danger had never been the Pitbull at all, but the very people entrusted to care for the child. The story closed with the community grieving not only the loss of a young life but also the betrayal that had allowed the truth to remain hidden for so long. It became a haunting example of how justice can eventually uncover even the most carefully buried secrets.